Jack Lemmon was one of the most beloved actors of his generation. A relentless workaholic, he grew his reputation as Hollywood's greatest tragicomic actor through sheer determination and not a little comedic genius. However, like many comedians behind the mask was a more troubled soul. It was not a little ironic that one of his finest serious roles would turn out to be a precursor to the day he would have to face his own demons years later. And it didn't help that this incredibly difficult moment took place in front of millions of people. This is the often hilarious and sometimes tragic story of Jack Lemmon. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries. Jack Lemmon entered the world on February 8, 1925, under circumstances that could have been scripted for the silver screen. Born in the elevator of Newton Wellesley Hospital in Newton, Massachusetts, he was the only child of Mildred Burgess and John Oler Lemmon. The Lemmons were a family that held tradition in high regard, as reflected in Jack's full name, John Oler Lemmon III, which honored both his father and grandfather. Jack's unconventional birth in an elevator is certainly in ironic contrast to the refined standards his mother, Millie, usually upheld. As it turned out, she was in the middle of her weekly game of bridge and wasn't about to let something like contractions inconvenience her. She was determined to finish the game, but Jack was equally determined to see the world, and 2 months early. Finally, she had no choice but to depart, but she only made it as far as the elevator at the Newton Wellesley Hospital before going into labor. Being born so early, little Jack was suffering from jaundice. This led a nurse to give him his first introduction to the world of wit when she pointed out his complexion and said, "Look at the little yellow lemon," which I can't imagine raised much of a laugh from poor Millie, at least not at the time. Millie was raised amid the grandeur of one of Baltimore's most prominent families, living in a 28-room mansion complete with servants. Her father, a successful businessman and president of the Knoll Construction Company, oversaw major projects, including work for the U.S. Naval Academy. Millie received little personal attention as one of 9 siblings. Both of her parents were heavy drinkers, a tendency that Millie herself would later adopt. The family's financial stability was rocked when Millie's father died suddenly of a heart attack at just 49. Though they avoided outright destitution, they were forced to leave their lavish home in Baltimore and rent out the property to make ends meet. Millie, who embodied the resilience of her class, did not pursue employment, as was customary for women of her social standing at the time. Yet she was anything but submissive. Strong-willed and independent, she was a long way from the stereotype of the fragile Victorian woman. Millie met her future husband, John Lemmon, during the 1920s. John, a World War I Navy officer, had successfully transitioned into business. He was determined to provide for his future children in ways he himself had not experienced. When Millie and John first started dating, they both lived in Baltimore. However, shortly after their wedding, John received a promotion to New England sales manager for the Reach Machinery Company, which specialized in baking equipment. This promotion brought the couple to the Boston area, where they would settle and raise their family. Boston became Jack Lemmon's hometown, the city where he spent his formative years and continued his education through college. For Millie, moving to Boston was a major upheaval from her roots in Baltimore's elite circles. John, meanwhile, had a knack for choosing the right career moves at the perfect time. After excelling at the Reach Machinery Company, he transitioned to become the vice president of engineering at the Hathaway Baking Company. During John's tenure, Hathaway thrived, but he left before its eventual collapse to join the Donut Corporation of America as vice president of sales. His timing was impeccable. The Donut Corporation not only survived the Great Depression, but emerged as a huge player in the industry. John remained with the company until his retirement, and Jack would often proudly claim that his father was responsible for introducing the donut to Britain. By the time Jack was born in February 1925, the Lemmons were comfortably settled in Boston. However, Jack's arrival came with complications. His premature birth took such a toll on Millie that she decided not to have more children. While the family's outward circumstances appeared idyllic, their private lives were more complicated. John's work kept him traveling frequently, leaving Millie to manage much of the household. Although she adored her son, Millie was not naturally maternal. She often spent her time in Boston's social hotspots, preferring to indulge her love of high society and cocktails. Her fondness for the city was such that she later joked about wanting her ashes buried at the Ritz-Carlton. John, when home, shared Millie's penchant for drinking, though he was less extroverted than his wife. At over 6 feet tall, he had an imposing presence, which young Jack found difficult to emulate. Jack, shy by nature, felt overshadowed by his father's physicality and confidence, qualities that he would take years to develop himself. As Jack grew older, the couple's relationship became more distant. They moved into separate bedrooms when Jack was still a boy, though they chose not to formally separate for his sake. Reflecting on this period, Jack later said that their decision to stay together caused more harm than good. The strain of uncertainty and the tension was what provoked his sense of humor to emerge as a classic defense mechanism. Jack's childhood was made even tougher by physical frailty that persisted well into his teenage years. As a boy, he battled an array of illnesses, including scarlet fever, measles, and mumps. His adenoids were removed no fewer than 5 times. Even as an adult, Jack never developed the robust build typical of many Hollywood leading men. John Lemmon placed immense value on upward mobility and ensured that Jack had access to a top-tier education. Jack was enrolled at Rivers Country Day School, a prestigious private institution. Academics, however, were not his strong suit. On the other hand, Jack discovered a love for acting during his time at Rivers. He began performing in school plays as an interest that had been sparked years earlier, when he joined his parents in amateur charity productions for his father's business. Jack later explained his passion for acting, saying, "I think whatever you do, if you are going to do it well or even if you don't do it well, you have to have a passion for it. And I am passionate about it. I love it. I respect it and it gets me. I get off on acting." Next, John sent Jack to Phillips Academy, Andover, one of the nation's most elite preparatory schools. Jack initially struggled to adjust to the boarding school environment. His shyness made it difficult to form friendships, and he missed his home. Over time, however, he grew to appreciate Andover and found his footing. Music also became a key part of his life during this time, as he taught himself to play the piano. Another formative experience came during summers at Lake Winnipesaukee in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, where his father had purchased a vacation home. It was there that Jack developed a lifelong love of fishing. Shortly after Jack graduated from Andover, his parents formally separated, though they never divorced due to John's Catholic faith. The separation was amicable and had long been anticipated, as their marriage had existed in name only for years. Millie stayed in the family home, while John moved to the Sheraton Hotel in Boston. By the time Jack Lemmon entered Harvard, he was far from the frail boy who had started at Phillips Andover. While he still wasn't particularly tall, he had gained enough strength to no longer seem physically weak. His enrollment came with the condition that he joined the ROTC program, which was designed to prepare students for service as Navy officers during World War II. This requirement placed Lemmon in classes focused on math and science, subjects he found tough going. While he did well in psychology and law, the heavier focus on technical subjects proved difficult for someone with his artistic inclinations. At the time, Harvard placed little emphasis on the arts, and if theater had been a viable major, Lemmon might have thrived. Instead, he channeled his passion for acting through extracurriculars, and he performed with the Hasty Pudding Club and other drama groups on campus. Although ROTC training at Harvard was considered prestigious, Jack's time in the Navy turned out to be less interesting than anticipated. He managed to secure a transfer to Boston, where he served as a decoding officer. His responsibilities were minimal, consisting mostly of overseeing the motor pool. Within 7 months, he had accrued enough points for an honorable discharge. Returning to Harvard with little fanfare from his military stint, he still needed to complete a semester to graduate, but his brief time in the Navy was far less demanding than he had anticipated. That summer, before resuming his studies, Lemmon joined the North Shore Players, a summer stock theater group in Beverly, Massachusetts. Acting with the North Shore troupe gave him the chance to perform alongside upcoming talents, including Roddy McDowell. Jack's father, John, had long envisioned his son pursuing a career in business. However, it became increasingly clear that this was not Jack's calling. So John lent him $300 to move to New York City and chase his dream of working in the theater. Life in the city proved difficult at first. Steady work was hard to find, and Lemmon struggled to support himself. Slowly, Lemmon began to establish himself, landing opportunities across theater, radio, and television. His first chance in film came early but was pretty underwhelming. In 1949, he appeared in The Lady Takes a Sailor, directed by Michael Curtis, for Warner Brothers. Lemmon's name didn't even make it into the credits, and the film itself was soon forgotten. At the time, Lemmon didn't see himself as a movie actor. His focus shifted to television, which was rapidly transforming entertainment in the early 1950s. As television grew in popularity, it began to chip away at the dominance of Hollywood studios, and this opened up new opportunities for performers like Jack. Lemmon found work on some hit shows such as Studio One and Robert Montgomery Presents. During his early years in New York, Lemmon met Cynthia Stone, an actress with a career mostly confined to television. The two worked together on several occasions, including the series That Wonderful Guy in 1949 and Heaven for Betsy in 1952, and they soon fell in love. The couple married in May 1950, and the wedding day, which took place in Cynthia's hometown of Peoria, Illinois, had its own drama. Jack's mother, Millie, had insisted on making her own way there, so when she was a no-show, everyone was concerned. They had every right to be. Her habit of solo boozing had led her to try and cook a late-night meal before bed. She had forgotten to turn off the gas stove and slept through the night with it on. Luckily, the neighbors smelled gas coming from the house in the morning and called the emergency services. Millie was in bad shape and hospitalized, although her life was saved. 4 years later, Jack and Cynthia welcomed their son, Chris, but the marriage didn't last. He had learned the lessons of his own parents' strained relationship, and Lemmon chose to divorce rather than prolong an unhappy union. Their split was finalized in 1956, and it would be years before Jack remarried. Lemmon's most iconic film roles would come later in his career, but his early work on the big screen deserves a mention. His first leading role was in It Should Happen to You in 1954, a modestly budgeted film that nonetheless gave him a major boost with audiences when it was a sleeper hit. Directed by the legendary George Cukor, the movie didn't garner much recognition during award season, but strong reviews and audience interest focused on the newcomer, Jack Lemmon. Cukor, known for his sophisticated comedies like Holiday and The Philadelphia Story, brought his signature mix of humor and social critique to the film. For Lemmon, It Should Happen to You was a turning point. From here, his career trajectory was beginning to turn sharply upward. This was also timely, as his big break on Broadway playing the lead in Room Service had been a disaster, with the play closing after just 2 weeks. Luckily, it was during this brief run that a talent scout spotted Lemmon and alerted Columbia exec Harry Cohn to his star potential. After the success of It Should Happen to You, Jack Lemmon signed a 7-year contract with Columbia Pictures. This deal put his theater and television career on hold, as the studio focused on making him a movie star, and he was the beneficiary of one of the most generous contracts Cohn ever gave out, one which allowed his major discovery to take jobs at other studios, a rarity at the time and unheard of for a newcomer. His first film under the contract was Fifth, released in November 1954. Lemmon was less than thrilled with the silly title and later blamed it for the movie's weak box office performance. It reunited Lemmon with his It Should Happen to You co-star Judy Holliday, and this time they played a married couple trying to rekindle their relationship after briefly exploring other partners. On the surface, the story seems like a typical Hollywood romantic comedy, but it subtly critiques the restrictive sexual norms of the 1950s. The following year, Lemmon's career picked up even more momentum. He appeared in 4 films in 1955, 3 for the show, Mr. Roberts, My Sister Eileen, and Hollywood Bronc Busters, where he played himself. Among these, Mr. Roberts was the clear standout and the first really important picture in Lemmon's career. His performance as Ensign Pulver, a morale officer on a Navy ship under the rule of a tyrannical captain, earned him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. This was the only supporting actor Oscar he would win, as his later career mostly featured leading roles. It's worth noting the irony of Lemmon's Oscar-winning performance in a naval film, considering his own unremarkable stint in the Navy. Yet the role foreshadowed a recurring theme in his career: characters who grow from hesitant beginnings to decisive action. Mr. Roberts was the start of a pattern in Lemmon's acting that would become one of his hallmarks. Furthermore, his role came about following what could only be described as Lemmon avoiding a major embarrassment. While hanging around the Columbia lot, a venerable man approached Lemmon and told him about a project he was working on, called Mr. Roberts, and asked if he would be interested in a part. Lemmon nonchalantly said he might be. At least he'd be willing to take a look at it. The older man nodded and walked away, just before a wide-eyed crew person ran up to Lemmon asking what the godlike figure of John Ford had wanted with him. Jack had not even recognized him, but he got the part anyway. Once on set, he might have had second thoughts, however. He made a firm friend in co-star James Cagney, but Ford's reputation for toughness and outright meanness was on full display. Cagney called Ford truly a nasty old man, and at one point the director socked leading man Henry Fonda square in the jaw. The cast and crew were somewhat relieved when a gallbladder attack saw Ford pulled off the project and replaced by Mervyn LeRoy and Joshua Logan. While his dramatic work earned him accolades, light comedy remained Lemmon's most comfortable territory. In 1956, he starred in You Can't Run Away From It, playing a down-on-his-luck reporter who falls for a woman in the center of a nationwide search after she's been declared missing. Though the storyline was predictable and not among his most sophisticated projects, the film's use of Technicolor and CinemaScope showed off some of the technical mastery that defined 1950s cinema. Audiences were also treated to Lemmon's natural ease on screen, and this cemented his reputation as a performer who could balance humor and heart. After You Can't Run Away From It, Jack Lemmon maintained a steady pace, appearing in at least one Columbia film each year. By this time, he was among the last of Hollywood stars to remain under a long-term studio contract. The era of studio dominance was waning, as more actors chose to work as freelancers, signing contracts on a film-by-film basis. While his commitment to Columbia limited the range of roles he could take, many of his films from this period hold merit, even if they had faded somewhat from public memory. Some of Lemmon's most iconic films from the late 1950s and beyond were made with other studios, but his Columbia work still offers glimpses of his versatility. In 1957, Lemmon stepped slightly outside his typical roles with Fire Down Below, co-starring Robert Mitchum and Rita Hayworth. The film tells the story of two Korean War veterans who smuggle goods across the Caribbean. Though Hayworth's character adds drama to the plot, the heart of the film lies in the dynamic between Lemmon and Mitchum. Their contrasting personas, Lemmon's nervous energy versus Mitchum's effortless cool, created an unlikely but very compelling on-screen friendship. The film was also something of an exploration of the complexities of male camaraderie, and this is a theme that would recur throughout Lemmon's career. The following year, Lemmon appeared in two very different films, Cowboy and Bell, Book and Candle. In the latter, a whimsical romantic comedy, Lemmon played a supporting role alongside Kim Novak and Jimmy Stewart, who was fresh off his performance in Hitchcock's Vertigo. In Cowboy, however, Lemmon took center stage as a man chasing his dream of becoming a cowboy. His character's journey is fueled by a desire to win the heart of a woman, though the romance ultimately fizzles. What emerges as more enduring is the bond between Lemmon's character and Glenn Ford's seasoned cowboy. The film's focus on male friendship, rather than romance, foreshadowed the dynamic Lemmon would later bring to his iconic collaborations with Walter Matthau. He was now a star, and this gave him the freedom and flexibility to look for roles that would challenge him. He said, "When I'm reading material, if I'm a little bit afraid of a part and I'm willing to admit that to myself, then I'll do it definitely. If I'm worried about being able to do it, to get it, I absolutely just love it." With this in mind, he was about to work with one of the most brilliant directors in Hollywood history, and one who would squeeze everything there was, so to speak, out of this Lemmon. One of the most thrilling moments in Lemmon's career came with his role in Some Like It Hot. However, the film has become a byword for on-set drama of legendary proportions. At first, Lemmon was not considered as a central figure in the project. The film was produced by United Artists, a studio Lemmon had not previously worked with, and his casting came only after Monroe and Tony Curtis had signed on. And yet his pitch-perfect performance and undeniable chemistry with his co-stars was a major career peak as he held his own against the mighty Curtis and Monroe combination. In fact, Wilder had written the part for Jerry Lewis, but Lewis turned down as he was squeamish about appearing in drag, which opened the door for Lemmon. Lemmon sent Lewis a box of chocolates every year for the rest of his life by way of gratitude for what Lewis admitted was one of the dumbest decisions of his career. Once Marilyn Monroe signed on, the studio's concerns about Lemmon's relative lack of star power were no longer a worry, and Wilder was free to cast whoever he liked. For everyone involved, Some Like It Hot became a defining moment. This didn't just go for its star-studded cast, but also for its director. By this point, Wilder was already a highly respected filmmaker, well known to the public for works like the noir masterpiece Double Indemnity and the scathing Sunset Boulevard. Like Fritz Lang, Wilder had fled Germany during the Nazi era and brought an unusual European perspective to Hollywood. In Some Like It Hot, his direction balances absurdity with sophistication, and Monroe shines in a role that plays to her strengths as a superb comedienne, an extremely underrated acting talent, and of course, the greatest wow factor of anyone ever projected onto a screen. Wilder's camera doesn't shy away from highlighting her sexuality either. Yet the film makes room for her performance to go beyond just her physical presence. On screen, there is no hint of the tensions that reportedly plagued the production. Instead, the film unfolds as a joyful, fast-paced romp, packed with outrageous comedic moments. For Jack Lemmon, Some Like It Hot was a resounding success. His performance earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. More importantly, the film cemented his place in cinematic history as one of the all-time great comedies. His ease at performing in drag came along with no small level of attention to detail. Early in the film's production, Lemmon convinced Tony Curtis, who, by the way, you can hear all about in our video on him, linked on screen now, and in the description, to dress up in their female costumes and walk around the studio lot to see how people reacted. Even though Curtis's tough guy upbringing and image made him more wary than Lemmon about this, he agreed, and to their surprise, no one batted an eyelid at them. They decided to raise the stakes and use the women's bathroom, and once again they passed as just a pair of dames powdering their noses like anyone else. That was when they knew they had nailed their parts, and were ready for their roles. As for the rest of the drama off-screen, well, I don't have the space to fit it all into this video. But what we do have is an extensive rundown of some of the flashpoints over on Patreon. The essays look into the scathing feud that erupted between Wilder and Monroe, the freakout at the Hays Code office at the cross-dressing scene, as well as the equally large freakout by modern audiences, some of whom have asked the film to be banned. If you want to catch up on all of that, you can do so on the Hollywood Histories tier over on Patreon or here as a YouTube member. You'll get access to that essay and over 30 others which I publish weekly for our supporters, as well as other Hollywood-related perks. And I'd like to thank all of our supporters for their incredible generosity, and also to all of you who have grabbed one of the exclusive shirts at the Hollywood Mystery Store, linked below in the description. For those of you on a budget, hitting like and subscribing to Hollywood Mysteries helps us out hugely too. But for now, let's get back to the Jack Lemmon story. After the runaway success of Some Like It Hot, Lemmon stayed true to his comedic roots, though his next few films were more understated in tone. In 1959, he starred alongside Doris Day in It Happened to Jane, a lighthearted romantic comedy set in small-town Maine. The film, like many of Doris Day's projects, doubled as a platform for her musical talents. While it had charming performances and easy laughs, the film was inevitably a big drop-down in quality after Some Like It Hot. Lemmon's next project, however, put him back together with Billy Wilder. Wilder cast him in The Apartment. The movie featured Lemmon alongside Shirley MacLaine and Fred MacMurray. MacLaine played Lemmon's romantic counterpart in the story. Lemmon's character, Cece Baxter, is a mild-mannered office worker who allows his bosses to use his apartment for their extramarital affairs in hopes of earning a promotion. Baxter is the quintessential everyman, the average American office worker trying and failing to climb the corporate ladder. While The Apartment is undeniably funny, Wilder's talent for weaving comedy with deeper emotional and social commentary is on full display. Beneath its humor is a scathing critique of corporate culture and the compromises people make in pursuit of success. Although Some Like It Hot may be Wilder's more iconic film today, The Apartment was better received at the time. It swept major awards at the Oscars, winning Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay, among others. Both McClane and Lemmon did well out of the film and became good friends. And if you're curious to know more about Shirley's life, including her absolutely ruthless devotion to her career and why she sent her 5-year-old daughter on a solo journey across the planet, we have a video about her linked on screen and in the description. By the early 1960s, Jack Lemmon had established himself as a master of romantic comedy, but his performance in 1962's Days of Wine and Roses demonstrated his ability to handle darker, more dramatic material. Directed by Blake Edwards, best known for comedies like The Pink Panther, the film was a huge departure from his usual work. Lemmon and co-star Lee Remick portrayed an alcoholic couple struggling to overcome their addiction. Lemmon's character eventually finds sobriety, but the film's ambiguous ending leaves Remick's fate uncertain. The movie hit deeply with audiences, in part because Lemmon had cultivated the image of an everyman, and yet now they saw this darkness unraveling. While Frank Sinatra had tackled addiction in The Man with the Golden Arm, it was easier for viewers to distance themselves from his portrayal. Lemmon's relatability made his depiction of an addict feel far more personal. And in truth, it was very personal. Lemmon decided to spend a few evenings at the Lincoln Heights dry-out rooms in preparation. He was deeply shocked by what he witnessed as people went through the horrifying process of alcohol withdrawal. As a big drinker himself, this experience was, for want of a better word, sobering. Later, while in the notorious straitjacket scene, he channeled some of the intense emotion he saw, but to such an extent that he continued to writhe and shout, even after the director called cut, prompting crew members to step in and cool him down so he could break character. The result was one of the decade's most unsettling yet impactful films, and it won him widespread praise and gave Lemmon another Academy Award nomination. Many consider it the most significant dramatic performance of his career. Little wonder that behind the scenes, his own drinking was quietly but insistently getting out of control. That same year, Days of Wine and Roses premiered. Lemmon married actress Felicia Farr. Like Lemmon, Farr had been married before and had a daughter, Denise, from her previous marriage. Their romance began during the filming of Lemmon's next project, Irma la Douce. Farr continued to act after their marriage, and in 1966 she gave birth to their daughter, Courtney, the couple's only child together. Lemmon and Farr remained devoted partners until his death. Speaking of Irma la Douce, this project reunited Lemmon with both Billy Wilder and Shirley MacLaine. Based on a popular 1956 French play, the film revolved around themes of love, morality, and societal hypocrisy. MacLaine played Irma, a beloved Parisian prostitute, while Lemmon portrayed a by-the-book policeman determined to shut down her neighborhood's sex trade. Predictably, his character falls for Irma, leading to a story filled with clever dialogue and some pretty risque humor. At nearly 2.5 hours, Irma la Douce was unusually long for romantic comedy. Nevertheless, the film was another success, earning far more than its considerable budget. While it wasn't as groundbreaking as Some Like It Hot or The Apartment, it once again showed Lemmon's knack for connecting with audiences. Lemmon's subsequent films in the mid-1960s leaned heavily into the romantic comedy genre. In Under the Yum Yum Tree, he played a more sexually assertive character than audiences were used to, and this one bagged him a Golden Globe nomination. This was followed by Good Neighbor Sam in 1964, and How to Murder Your Wife the year after that, both of which earned him BAFTA nominations for Best Actor. After the shocking scenes he witnessed while preparing for Days of Wine and Roses, he was about to encounter another terrible alcohol-related moment in his life. For many years, Jack had done his best to support his ailing mother, who had continued drinking with the same enthusiasm as when she had been a society girl back in the early 1920s. By 1967, she was ailing, and Jack's father had passed away back in 1962. Lemmon always made sure to take time out to visit her and to make it a special occasion. He was going to take her out for the day, and so he was surprised when he rang the bell to her apartment and received no response. Worried, he decided to force the door and see what was going on. When he got inside, he was devastated by the scene. His mother was sitting in her favorite chair, dressed in her finest clothes, all ready to go out with her son for the day. Only she was, tragically, stone cold dead. She had passed away from heart failure while she was waiting for him to arrive. Jack was heartbroken, and once he had recovered from the grief, all he could do was throw himself into his work even more than before. Jack Lemmon may today be best remembered for his iconic collaborations with Walter Matthau, but by the time they first worked together, Lemmon was already a well-established Hollywood star. Matthau, on the other hand, had a good reputation in the industry, but had yet to achieve leading man status and major public recognition. But that was all about to change thanks to the incredible chemistry he had with Lemmon. The two men came from the same generation, though Matthau was 5 years older. His rugged, lived-in appearance, a product of chain-smoking 3 packs a day until his mid-40s, added to this persona. Before teaming up with Lemmon, Matthau often played shady or morally ambiguous characters, with his role in Elia Kazan's A Face in the Crowd standing out as one of his finest performances. His real breakthrough, however, came in 1965 with the stage production of The Odd Couple, which later became one of the pair's most famous films. Lemmon's partnership with Matthau didn't make Jack into a star. He was already a household name. But it did lead to a series of classic comedies that leaned away from romance and focused on sharp humor and character dynamics. Their first collaboration was The Fortune Cookie, directed by Billy Wilder. In the film, Lemmon plays Harry Hinkle, a cameraman injured during a football game when a player crashes into him. Matthau co-stars as Willie Gingrich, Harry's scheming brother-in-law and a lawyer with questionable ethics. Willie convinces Harry to exaggerate his injuries, pretending to be paralyzed in his hand and leg, to secure a large settlement. Initially, Harry goes along with the ruse, partly hoping to win back his ex-wife. However, he ultimately decides to confess the truth. This setup introduced audiences to the quintessential Lemmon-Matthau dynamic. Lemmon's character serves as the moral compass, a straight man tempted by the misdeeds of Matthau's roguish, manipulative figure. The contrast between them was immediately compelling. Lemmon was shorter and traditionally handsome, while Matthau's taller, stockier frame and slightly clownish appearance created a physical and comedic foil. This contrast became even more pronounced as they aged, with Matthau's persona growing larger than life. Although Lemmon's characters were often drawn into Matthau's schemes, he consistently rejected them by the film's end, maintaining the moral center without alienating or condemning Matthau's character. Their on-screen chemistry proved electric, greater than the sum of their individual talents. Lemmon had an instinct that Matthau was the perfect fit for the role of Willie Gingrich. When studio executives suggested Frank Sinatra or Jackie Gleason, Lemmon pushed for Matthau instead, and his intuition paid off. Matthau's performance earned him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. 2 years later, the duo reunited for what would become their most famous film together, The Odd Couple. The story was already familiar to Matthau, who had played sports writer Oscar Madison in the original stage production. In the film, Lemmon stepped into the role of Felix Ungar, originally portrayed by Art Carney on stage. Felix is a tightly wound neat freak recovering from the pain of a recent separation, while Oscar is a messy, laid-back bachelor. The comedy lies in their mismatched personalities as they attempt to share an apartment after both have split from their respective wives. Though The Odd Couple is widely regarded as a comedy classic, it also touches on deeper themes. Felix's character is a subtle critique of traditional masculinity. His depression and obsessive tendencies reflect the struggles of a man navigating life without the structure of marriage and family. The film's success also reflected the era's growing interest in male friendships, a theme shared by other late 1960s classics like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and Midnight Cowboy. However, The Odd Couple leaned heavily into comedy. The film's success wasn't solely due to the lead's chemistry. Neil Simon's sharp writing played a major role and gave them a solid foundation for their performances. It was no surprise then that Lemmon's next project, The Out-of-Towners, was also based on a script by Simon. In this comedy of errors, Lemmon starred opposite Sandy Dennis as George and Gwen Kellerman, a married couple from the Midwest who traveled to New York City for a job interview. Their visit becomes a series of escalating disasters, as they navigate a chaotic urban environment far removed from their quiet Midwestern life. Despite all the chaos, George eventually receives the job offer only to reject it. The film ends with a couple boarding a flight home, only to have their plane hijacked and diverted to Cuba, suggesting that their misadventures are far from over. The Out-of-Towners is one of Lemmon's quintessential everyman performances. While the film pokes fun at the bustle and complexity of New York, its conclusion reaffirms the simpler, humbler appeal of Midwestern life. In 1971, Jack Lemmon stepped behind the camera for the first and only time to direct the film Koch. The project had a personal feel, with Walter Matthau in the lead role and his wife, Felicia Farr, appearing in a supporting part. Matthau plays Joseph P. Kocher, an aging man whose growing senility leads his family to consider placing him in a nursing home. To avoid this fate, he embarks on a cross-country journey. It was natural for Lemmon to cast Matthau in the title role, given their long-standing collaboration. However, Matthau was only 51 at the time, and some critics felt he was too young to convincingly portray a man on the brink of senility. Despite this, his performance earned him an Academy Award nomination. Nevertheless, Lemmon chose not to pursue directing further, leaving Koch as his sole effort behind the camera. Lemmon returned to acting in 1972, reuniting with Billy Wilder for Avanti. The film, one of their most polarizing collaborations, stars Lemmon as Wendell Armbruster Jr., a man who travels to an Italian villa to collect the body of his recently deceased father. Once there, he discovers his father had been carrying on a long-term affair with a British woman. The plot unfolds as Wendell comes to terms with this revelation and begins to question the rigid social conventions that have shaped his life. Critics remain divided on Avanti to this day. Some, like David Wallace, have dismissed it as Wilder's weakest film, citing its overly whimsical and implausible story. Roger Ebert offered a mixed assessment, writing, "Avanti isn't a laugh-a-minute kind of movie, and it's too long by maybe half an hour. It also suffers from the problem that the audience has everything figured out several minutes before Jack Lemmon does. Still, the movie has a certain charm, some of which seeps in along with the locations. And there is, in most of the many Wilder-Lemmon collaborations, a cheerful insouciance, as if life is best approached with a cheerful, if puzzled, grin." Lemmon's next project, Save the Tiger, was a dramatic shift, and earned him his first and only Academy Award for Best Actor. He had consistently lobbied Paramount to give him a passion project, and after he had brought them plenty of big earnings, they finally relented and let him make Save the Tiger. Despite the Oscar, the film was otherwise a bomb with audiences. In the film, he plays Harry Stoner, a once principled businessman running a struggling clothing company. As the story unfolds, Harry grapples with the moral compromises he has made to keep his business afloat, including arson and other unethical practices. His encounter with a free-spirited hippie challenges his perspective and awakens regret for the person he has become. The role stood out among Lemmon's filmography. While he often played characters with unwavering moral centers, Harry Stoner is deeply flawed, a man who has strayed far from his ethical foundations. Yet, in true Lemmon fashion, the film concludes with a sense of redemption, restoring his persona as the relatable, morally upright everyman. Save the Tiger really shows the duality of Lemmon's career. His ability to step into darker, more complex roles, while ultimately reaffirming the genial image that endeared him to audiences. Jack Lemmon's final collaboration with Billy Wilder came with The Front Page in 1974, which was a sharp-tongued comedy adapted from the play by Ben Hecht and Charles MacArthur. The story had already been immortalized on screen in Howard Hawks' 1941 screwball classic, His Girl Friday. In Wilder's version, Walter Matthau and Lemmon take on the roles previously made famous by Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. Matthau plays a scheming newspaper editor trying to prevent his star reporter, played by Lemmon, from quitting his job. The film thrives on its razor-sharp dialogue, showcasing the verbal sparring that defined the Lemmon-Matthau dynamic. Unlike many comedic duos, their humor was rooted in wit rather than slapstick, and The Front Page is an excellent example of this strength. By this time, Jack's balance of hard work and hard drinking was becoming, well, visibly unbalanced. It came to light in full public view when he was presenting an award to his friend James Cagney on television in 1974. A stumbling and incoherent speech caught people's attention, and he was forced to answer questions about his health. He blamed it on a mix of medication and alcohol, although it was pretty clear it was an excess of the latter, which was really causing the issue. He was sheepish and evidently embarrassed, and his life was in danger of mirroring his role in Days of Wine and Roses. But this was not a turning point, it seems, as 2 years later he suffered further embarrassment when he was pulled over and charged with drunk driving. In the mid-1970s, Lemmon took time away from Mathau and explored a mix of projects, though many of these films were underwhelming by his admittedly high standards. He starred in The Prisoner of Second Avenue, a dark comedy based on the Neil Simon play, and appeared in the disaster genre spoof, Airport 77. While these films kept him busy, it was the China Syndrome that was a return to form, and it kicked off a string of critically acclaimed roles from 1979 to 1982. In the China Syndrome, Lemmon plays Jack Goodell, a nuclear power plant engineer who uncovers alarming safety violations at the facility. Jane Fonda and Michael Douglas co-star as a television reporter and cameraman investigating the plant. The tension builds as the plant narrowly avoids a catastrophic explosion, thanks to Goodell's quick actions. As the story unfolds, Goodell discovers that the company's cost-cutting compromises have endangered everyone's safety. The film's critique of nuclear energy struck a chord with 1970s audiences, a time when general fear about impending nuclear attack, or indeed disaster, was at the forefront of many people's minds. Lemmon followed the success with 2 more Oscar-nominated performances in Tribute and Missing. In Tribute, Lemmon plays Scotty Templeton, a terminally ill father trying to repair his strained relationship with his son. The role draws on familiar themes from Lemmon's earlier work. Templeton's struggle with alcohol recalls the raw vulnerability of Days of Wine and Roses, while the redemptive arc mirrors the moral reckoning seen in Save the Tiger. In Missing, Lemmon plays Ed Horman, a conservative father searching for his son Charlie, who has disappeared during a military coup in Chile. While Ed starts as a man of faith in the American government and its ideals, his journey uncovers troubling truths. He learns not only that his politically radical son has been killed, but also that the U.S. government was complicit in the events leading to Charlie's death. Directed by Costa Gavras, a filmmaker known for his politically charged narratives, Missing was based on a true story and had the director's signature style of transcending mere entertainment to become a powerful political statement. Set in 1973 but released during the Reagan administration, the film's critique of American foreign policy kicked up a hornet's nest of controversy. Some, like Pauline Kael, lambasted it for what they perceived as an anti-American slant. Many felt that the Costa Gavras axe to grind overshadowed the story. On the other hand, Lemmon's portrayal of Ed Horman remained widely admired. Scholar Charles Derry described the character as a decent American, perhaps slightly right-wing, a devoutly religious Christian scientist who believes in his government. Even in a politically charged film, he conveyed the relatable innocence of an average American navigating extraordinary circumstances. As Lemmon moved into his 60s, his on-screen presence began to shift. His workload lightened, not because roles were unavailable, but because he chose to step back. Following Missing, he took on fewer major projects, focusing on roles that often reflected his advancing age. 2 notable examples from this period are That's Life and Dad, both of which have themes of aging and family. In That's Life, directed by Blake Edwards, who had previously worked with Lemmon on Days of Wine and Roses, Lemmon plays Harvey Fairchild, a man grappling with the existential dread of turning 60. His fears about aging strain his relationships with his family, leading to moments of selfishness and questionable behavior, including infidelity. By the film's end, however, Harvey finds redemption through reconnecting with his loved ones, rediscovering the value of family. In Dad, Lemmon portrays an even older character, Jack Lemmon, a man facing the harsh realities of aging, including physical decline and eventual death. The film delves into the dynamics of a multi-generational family, with Lemmon's character representing the fragility of old age and the strength of familial bonds. Though Jake's story is deeply emotional, it shares thematic DNA with That's Life, as both films emphasize the importance of family and personal growth. While neither film received overwhelming critical acclaim, Lemmon's performances were, as ever, excellent. As the 1990s began, Jack Lemmon slowed down his output even further, appearing in few films and usually taking on supporting roles if he did. One of his first projects of the decade was Oliver Stone's JFK from 1991, a high-profile drama about the investigation into President John F. Kennedy's assassination. Lemmon played private investigator Jack Martin, while his longtime collaborator Walter Matthau also had a small role. Lemmon continued with minor roles in Robert Altman's superb films, The Player and Shortcuts. However, he didn't leave leading roles behind entirely, and the early 90s proved surprisingly fruitful for him. In 1992, he co-starred in Glengarry Glen Ross, adapting from David Mamet's acclaimed play. The film's ensemble cast included Al Pacino, Alec Baldwin, and Kevin Spacey, the latter of whom credited Lemmon as a mentor. Spacey later recalled Lemmon's belief that established actors should send the elevator back down to help the next generation, and Lemmon used his vast experience to guide Spacey. In 1993, Lemmon reunited with Walter Matthau for Grumpy Old Men, which became one of the most beloved films of his later career. The movie reimagined the dynamic that had worked so well in their earlier films, now filtered through the lens of their older years. Set in Minnesota, the story follows two feuding neighbors locked in an ongoing rivalry, primarily over ice fishing and a mutual romantic interest in their charming new neighbor, played by Anne Margaret. The film delivered exactly what fans of Lemmon and Matthau had hoped for: witty banter, mischievous pranks, and a heartfelt depiction of friendship beneath the surface antagonism. While the studio expected the movie to resonate mainly with older audiences, it surprisingly appealed to viewers across generations. Longtime fans appreciated the nostalgia of seeing Lemmon and Matthau together again, while younger audiences enjoyed the humor and lively performances. Hollywood quickly seized on the success of Grumpy Old Men, leading to the release of Grumpier Old Men in 1995. The sequel retained the original cast including Anne Margaret, Burgess Meredith as Lemmon's father, and Daryl Hannah as his daughter. The film introduced Sophia Loren as Matthau's love interest. While less focused on the rivalry between Lemmon and Matthau's characters, the sequel maintained the charm of the original and even outperformed it at the box office. Critics were less enthusiastic, but audiences loved the humor and the chance to see Lemmon and Matthau together again. Their partnership continued with Out to Sea, and somewhat inevitably The Odd Couple 2 in 1998, with the latter being pretty watchable, albeit nowhere near as brilliant as the original movie. During his final years, Lemmon played Marcellus in 1996's Hamlet, and lent his voice to narrate The Legend of Bagger Vance in 2000, which became his final film. He also had a truly fantastic role in the TV version of 12 Angry Men. He was nominated for a Best Actor Golden Globe, but surprisingly the award went to Ving Rhames for his role in Don King, Only in America. However, Rhames was not going to sit back and take an award he believed Lemmon had earned, so he magnanimously called Lemmon up onto the stage and handed Jack the award, which led to a standing ovation from the audience. Though Lemmon never formally retired, his career wound down as his health declined. In 1998, he publicly disclosed his struggle with alcoholism, a private battle he had kept hidden for most of his life. The following year, he was diagnosed with colon and bladder cancer, though he chose not to make the news public. Lemmon passed away on June 27, 2001, at the age of 76. In a poignant reminder of their long friendship, Lemmon was buried near Walter Matthau, who had died a year earlier. Reflecting on Matthau's passing, Lemmon said, "I have lost someone I loved as a brother, as a closest friend, and a remarkable human being. We have also lost one of the best damn actors we'll ever see." Lemmon summed up their enduring bond perfectly when he said, "Death ends a life, not a relationship." While many of Jack Lemmon's films fall into the category of light comedies, it would be reductive to view his career solely through that lens. His versatility earned him both an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor and Best Actor. Even in his lighter films, particularly those directed by Billy Wilder, Lemmon brought depth and social commentary to his performances. Lemmon's passion for acting was evident from the start. From his childhood ambitions to his final performances, he approached his craft with an unmistakable love and work ethic. Whether playing the relatable everyman or tackling darker, more complex roles, Lemmon was brilliant. It seems throughout his life he was trying to mask a sense of inadequacy through comedy, hard work, and sadly, alcohol. However, he was far more than adequate. and his passion for acting elevated him to the status he holds today, one of the all-time greats. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and maybe also to drop by our store for any last-minute Christmas shopping you need to do for the movie fans in your life. Until next week, sweet dreams.